I was a hammer thrower, and I've also participated in higher levels of athletics in wrestling and strongman events, but also as a weightlifter, where I qualified for our nationals and I was fifth at our nationals in 2003. And I have developed athletes who have played collegiate sports and university sports, and I have worked with Olympic trials caliber athletes in weightlifting, swimming, and track and field, particularly distance running, which is marathon is as far apart from weightlifting as you can get. And I love working with all those athletes. And we work with athletes of all ages here in our gym. And our gym is in New Jersey. We are just outside of New York City. And what I'm going to share with you today is just my basic overview and outlook for how I'm going to develop strength in our athletes and what I'm looking for. And the very first thing that I consider when we develop strength is that there are different kinds of strength, that it's not just about power and it's not just about lifting the most weight. And I go to Yuri Verkhoshansky and his 7 different kinds of strength. And the first one is maximal strength, which is the greatest magnitude of effort given all the time we have. And these are things like squats, bench press, deadlift. And we have a lot of external resistance there, but we don't generate a lot of power or speed. We have high speed strength, which is high speed movements involving a small external resistance, like javelin throw, baseball, softball, sports like that, where we'll throw or move some smaller objects with as much force as possible. Explosive strength is the Olympic weightlifting, shot put, discus throw, hammer throw, and it's characterized by our ability to display a great amount of strength in a very short period of time. And starting strength is our ability to overcome inertia, to produce a rapid increase in force at the beginning of a movement, at the beginning of muscle tension. So it's picking something up from the ground and coming out of the blocks in the sprints. And something I pay special attention to with my athletes is our reactive ability. And this is the ability to utilize the stretch shortening cycle and to develop the nervous system to the point where we can change direction and stop, decelerate movement as quickly as possible. And our reactive ability is very much genetic, but it can be greatly enhanced by proper training. And then we have local muscular endurance, which is the ability to have the muscles and systems, energy systems of the body work together for a long period of time with no decrease in our working effect. So longer sports like running, distance running, mid-distance, even the sprints to a degree, cycling and rowing are great examples of our local muscular endurance. And then maximal anaerobic power is the ability of the body to effectively execute work in cyclic or repeated regimes. And the classic examples of this are rugby and American football and sprint cycling. When I look at strength for my athletes, I'm always evaluating them along the force velocity curve and the needs of them for their particular sport. Sprinters need different types of strength along this curve than do weightlifters. Endurance runners need different things than weightlifters do. And at the high end of the force curve, we have maximal isometric strength. Then we have maximal strength. And to train and display maximal strength, we have squats, presses, and deadlifts. And the maximal strength is going to be the basis for our future training. Maximal strength is very important, but it is not the be all and end all of what we need. So while we may need to be able to squat 300 or 400 pounds in order to perform an activity, sporting activity, efficiently, squatting more than that may not help us in that sporting activity. Just like, so in weightlifting, if you can squat 500 pounds, but only clean and jerk 250, we're not, and I don't know if I should be speaking in pounds or kilos. So if you can squat 230 kilos and only clean and jerk 100 kilos, then we are not optimizing ourselves for the sport, and we need less maximal strength. And one of the issues with maximal strength is that if we focus too much on that, especially initially, it is very hard to bring up our other types of strength, such as strength speed and speed strength. Strength speed is the snatch, the clean, and the jerk. Our ability to express power, lift heavier things, move heavier things, and move heavier things quickly. Speed strength is utilizing that stretch shortening cycle that I mentioned before. And we're probably all familiar with the stretch shortening cycle. It happens in depth jumps and plyometrics and sports all the time, where we go into an eccentric movement and then fire out of it. So in weightlifting, the dip of the jerk is the most obvious example. And in sports, long jumping, high jumping, that penultimate step, and then the takeoff. We have speed at the higher end of the force velocity curve, where we have to be able to sprint well. So what we can the natural movement patterns of the athletes. So what we use this curve for is we will use this curve to look at our athletes' sport needs. And once we develop a base, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Once we develop a base, so do we want them to be more in a sprinting phase, or do we need more strength speed? Now, all athletes need all of these, but some athletes will need more specific things here. Some will need more strength. Ways to tell what athletes need are, there is a reactive strength index and a dynamic strength. The reactive strength index is the athlete's ability to utilize the stretch shortening cycle. I like using the reactive strength index, but to test it requires some equipment and a computer app or a computer program, and those can be had for about $400 or $500 US, and that's maybe cost prohibitive for some clubs. And the reactive strength index will give you a score, 1 to 4, and above a 2.5 is excellent, and below 1.5 is poor. If we are above a 2.5, our athletes can utilize that stretch shortening cycle. They are very explosive. Their reactive strength is very good. If we're below a 1.5, we have to do special training for these athletes. So those athletes who are below a 1.5 are the ones who can't jump efficiently, change direction efficiently, and we have to assess what their needs are, whether it is maximal strength, whether it is basic coordination, etc. And athletes who are at that level need. I'm sorry, say that again. All right. Athletes who are poor in the reactive strength index need a lot of special and progressive planning. The dynamic strength index is harder to measure because you need to measure the power output of a ballistic movement, how fast it takes to reach maximal force. But what I like using for the dynamic strength index, especially for weightlifters, is the Olympic lifting ratios. We'll say that in the Olympic lifting ratios, we can see how efficiently people can use maximal strength to demonstrate their power. And your snatch should be about 80% of your clean and jerk. Your back squat, about 130% of your clean and jerk. Lighter and heavier lifters can add up to 10% to that. Our power snatch and our power clean have a ratio to the clean and jerk of about 85 to 90%. I would like my lifters, the male lifters, to be able to bench press about what they can clean, and the women to bench press about what they can snatch. I'd like all my lifters to be able to push press 70 to 80% of their jerk, so what they can snatch. And if we're doing partial or block movements, they should always be within 10% of our best. I use that instead of the dynamic strength index because this gives me the ability to measure as we are progressing. And the dynamic strength index is always changing because of how we write programs. And I don't go into a lot of program writing in today's talk because that just takes a long time to cover, and that's a topic for another time. But as we program, we will have moments in the program where we are stronger. So we can show maximal force better, where we can squat more. And then we'll have instances where we are faster and able to develop power, demonstrate power really well when we're going up for a meet for weightlifting or track and field. Or it's a little bit different when we have our athletes who are competing in different sports like football or rugby or volleyball, etc. But I like to look at the ratios, the strength ratios of the athlete. I like to make sure they're what we need. The next thing I'm going to talk about is how we introduce strength. And I like to use 4 basic stages. We have a beginner, an intermediate, an advanced intermediate, and then an elite levels of strength development. And the beginners, let me look in the chats here. The beginners are going to be younger athletes or new athletes. Everybody needs to go through these stages. So even if we have somebody come in who is 20, 25 years old, they're going to be a beginner if they haven't done sports before, done athletics before. Our beginner stages, the very first things we're going to look at are coordination. Jumping rope is a wonderful way to develop coordination. Also skipping and crawling, different types of skipping, different types of crawling close to the ground, flat back crawls, crab walks, things like that. But jumping rope is a wonderful way to develop coordination. All types of squats, goblet squats, front squats, back squats, they will really help that beginner to learn how to coordinate their muscles and to use their body in its entirety. Body weight strength, push-ups, pull-ups, handstands, they are an absolute essential tool for our beginner athletes. Our athletes need to learn how to control their body, how to move it in space, and only the body weight movements are going to really develop that sense, especially at a young age. And then we will do progressions of jumping in the Olympic lifts. Our jumping progressions can start with depth drops, and our Olympic lifting progressions are lifts from the hang positions, above the knee, at the knee, etc. And we will do isometric movements here too. A lot of times we will hold the isometrics for anywhere from 45 to 90 seconds in different progressions, different sets, and we'll hold isometric lunges, squats, isometric push-up position, isometric toe raise, calf raises, toe raises, heel raises, anything like that to learn how to control the body. And then this is where we'll introduce endurance. And endurance is a type of strength. And all our athletes need endurance and need a basis of endurance. So at the beginner stage, we'll have athletes run, row, play soccer for 20 to 30 minutes or more. Anything where we can get them moving constantly. And for adults, it might be jogging or rowing or getting on the bike. For kids, it's going to be playing games. And this period will last 6 months or more for an adult. And for children, we are focusing on this up to at least the age of 12 to 14. They can learn sports skills here, they can learn other things, but our strength development is very basic coordination, squats, body weight strides, up until the ages of 12 to 14. Once we get a little bit older than 12 or 14, and once our athletes who are adults have been with us for 6 months or more, we're going to move into an intermediate level of strength. And that's where we have general physical qualities. And these are the qualities we want to focus on. We have the 7 types of strength, but we also have our mobility and our flexibility. We want to emphasize the Olympic weightlifting movements and multiple joint exercises. So snatches, cleans, jerks, squats, presses are going to comprise almost all our strength training here. We do also want to have unilateral, so one arm and one leg work, and multiplanar progressions, where we have twisting movements left and right, bending over movements such as the snatch and clean and jerk that we do, and we want to have other movements that make the body stronger as we do athletic things, like throwing punches for boxing, wrestling. We want to make the body strong throughout all those ranges of motion. So we have to have unilateral and multiplanar progressions. We want to focus on a need to drive this so fast and heavy that our athletes are breaking down. We always want to train for success. And one of the big problems I say is that coaches will start to push their athletes a little too hard in this intermediate stage. Always looking for new max lifts and max times every week. We want the athlete to learn to progress steadily and to experience success. That is going to produce an athlete who wants to stick with strength training and sport for a long and extended period of time. And that is absolutely what we need to succeed in sports, because people will have children that like the sports and want to stay in it for a long period of time and have good success. And the moderate load of the body is going to reduce immediate injuries, and it will also prep us for the harder loads that are going to come with higher level sport. Athletes in the intermediate strength zone still need to do endurance, running, rowing, etc., for 30 to 60 minutes or more for all athletes. But we can keep the heart rate low here for athletes who are not going to be doing, we can keep the heart rate low here outside of the game context. For the athletes who are running and sprinting and playing sports like basketball or rugby or soccer, they get a lot of work on the field, and our endurance can be kept more moderate for those athletes. For athletes who are not going to be football players, hockey players, etc., we can keep the endurance, and it is important, we can keep it a lower intensity, because that low intensity endurance is going to build our capacity to get stronger. And we do also want to push this endurance as a habit that we can get to higher and higher time intervals. I like to think of endurance for my intermediate athletes in 30-minute blocks. So we will do 1 or 2 or 3 30-minute blocks. So 30, 60 to 90 minutes of endurance for the intermediate level athletes. This will last for our trainees 6 to 18 months or more for an adult. And we will be focusing on this for our kids up to from age 13 to age 16 or 17. Once we get past this stage, we have the advanced intermediate strength. And our athletes are really developing here. And this is where we get to use special development exercises and competition exercises. I'll talk a little bit about the differences in types of exercises in a few minutes. But here, with the special development exercises, competition exercises, we start to make ourselves stronger specifically for the sport we're choosing to play or sports we're choosing to play. Our Olympic movements and multi-joint exercises are the basis for these competition exercises, but they aren't a goal in themselves. Is a 180 kilo clean, a 400 pound clean, going to make you a better footballer? Probably not. But is the ability to clean 100 to 120 kilos going to make you a better football player? Probably. So we want to always use these abilities to enhance our sport on the field, but never should strength training overtake the need for sports performance. It should always be enhancing it, always pushing it, and never take away from it. Of course, weightlifting is a different type of sport in that strength training is essentially our sport. But again, if we are squatting 300 kilos, but we can only clean and jerk 150 kilos, we have an issue, and we don't need to be that strong. We need to learn to express power and not maximum force. So we always, as coaches, and especially in this stage, have to look at the needs of our sport and the needs of the individual athlete. And that's how we're going to really start to push people and make them better athletes. Because we are looking not just at outside things, but we're looking at what the athlete should be doing for themselves and for their sport. We'll do remedial exercises for health, especially mobility exercises, and we will continue our unilateral and multiplanar stuff here. It will be lighter, and it will be designed to help prevent injury. And as always, training should enhance sports performance. I will say this many, many times today. We want to train so our sports get better. We don't want to train, we don't want to do strength development just for the sake of getting stronger. We must use strength development as a way to get better for sports. All athletes of all types need speed, strength, power, and endurance. There must be a balance. Still, weightlifters should walk, row, hike, or bike. Middle distance runners should do snatches. It will help them each in their respective sports doing these things. And the advanced intermediate level is where we are going to start to differentiate a little bit more, but still, distance runners should still be doing snatches. Distance runners should be doing cleans. And weightlifters should still be doing 30 to 60 minutes a couple times a week of basic cardiovascular exercise. This period is going to last 1 to 4 years in adults. In fact, many of our adult athletes never really get beyond this stage because they are not professional athletes. And our youth and junior athletes will be in this until they are 16 to 23 years of age. Something you've probably noticed is that as we progress, the time periods in each stage get longer, and also the ages and the age groupings get bigger. That's because athletes are going to be starting at different levels and different ages. And expertise takes a longer time to develop. Once, let me start that sentence over again. Everybody's going to go through these 4 stages. Even if we have a 23-year-old athlete come in who's never trained before, they have to do the beginner stage. They will do the beginner stage. They're just not capable of, just because they're older, doing different stages of development. So everybody's going to go through these stages. That's why I have the beginner stage lasting 6+ months, but also is what we do for kids up to age 13 or 14. Because an adult can come in and they can be at that beginner stage. Once we progress past the advanced intermediate stage, we're going to move to an advanced elite stage. And this is where special strength training exercises and competition exercises comprise the majority of training, especially in season or closer to competitions. The Olympic movements and multi-joint exercises, we continue to use them to support basic strength and power and to reduce injury risk. Again, these are not the goal in and of the program themselves. There will be times in the year where we do more of these lifts. There will be times in the year where we do not very many of these movements at all, so that we can specialize for our sport. We will pay tremendous amount of attention at this level to remedial and therapy exercises for health, especially mobility and special exercises to balance the stress to the system and to emphasize longevity and address chronic injury. When an athlete has been training for 4, 5, 6, 10 or more years, they're going to develop chronic injuries and chronic pain as they become more specialized in a sport. And our strength training should address those chronic injuries in order to reduce them and to improve the longevity. So we want to make sure our shoulders are always healthy, especially for our overhead athletes. We want to make sure our hips are strong and healthy, so that as we get stronger and better, we will be focusing very much on movement and strength of movement and position, and not just overall strength. Again, training at this level should enhance sports performance and extend careers. And this period will last 7 to 15 years or more for an adult, especially non-professional athletes who are still high level, and 17 to 23 or more. And for athletes, this is going to happen at the age of 17 to 23 plus. And it can last into the 30s and 40s. When we are training our athletes at the beginner level, 80% of their work is going to be general preparatory exercises. And general preparatory exercises are exactly what we've talked about most so far. And there are things like body weight training, coordination, squats, presses, snatches, clean jerk. And 20% are going to be special preparatory exercises, special developmental exercises, and competition exercises. These are movements which are going to develop sport-specific skills. For our beginner, we were going to be doing just general types of things like throwing, basic jumping. We're not going to really get into too many specific competition exercises, but because sports require those movements, jumping and throwing, we'll do some of them at this level. In the intermediate level, I generally look at 60 to 70% of my exercises are the general preparatory, 15 to 20% are special preparatory, 10 to 15% are special developmental, and 5 to 15% are competition exercises. When we get into the special developmental and competition exercises, some of that is going to be done during sports practice times, and we will have to coordinate with the sport coach to do those things, to see what the coach is doing, so that we don't overload the athletes. Um, at the advanced intermediate level, 50 to 70% of our exercise is going to be general. And then we start really looking at special preparatory, special developmental, and competition exercises coming in at different levels to make up the other 30 to 50%. And they will be different for different sports, different parts of the training. One of the biggest mistakes I see in America is that strength coaches and sport coaches want to start this advanced intermediate distribution far too early in the training cycle of an athlete. We must go through all the stages of athletics of building an athlete, the beginner, the intermediate stages, to build a base so that the athlete can benefit the most from the advanced intermediate, these special competition, special preparatory exercises. If we start this phase too soon, our athletes will get injured. They will not perform as well in their sport as we could. And as a coach, starting these exercises too soon, focusing just on the snatch and the clean and jerk and not on other movements for weightlifting coaches, not focusing on hip health and unilateral movements at the beginner stages will cause an athlete to get injured later in their career. Focusing just on sprinting and just on quarter squats for sprinters rather than full body development, especially at the younger age, is going to hurt the sprinters. It will cause them to get injured. They will not be able to support their body in the stresses that happen at all out running. It is really vitally important that we don't overemphasize competition and special sports prep exercises too early in athlete development. It is going to be athletes age 16 to 17 or older who start to do this. And even at that stage, it is only about half of the stuff we're doing. And in adult level athletes who come to us, it's going to take a year and a half to 2 to 3 to 4 years to reach this advanced intermediate stage. At our advanced elite stage, we see huge differences in what our athletes need individually. So we can have 25 to 70% of our exercises be general: squats, pulls, presses. For our non-weightlifting athletes, that's going to include snatch, clean and jerk. 15 to 25% special prep exercises, 15 to 25% special development, and 25 to 50% competition exercises. Of course, that's going to all be different depending on different times of the year where we are. But for advanced and elite athletes, what we're doing for the general exercises is we are using them to prepare the athlete for the rigors of their professional sports season. As the athlete progresses, the smaller changes that we make will make bigger differences. Specialization does produce success, but it also increases stress, burnout, and injury. So as our athletes specialize, we will be making smaller and smaller changes to their technique, to their program, and that's awesome. And that's ultimately where we want to develop athletes. But if we do that too soon, our athletes will be more likely to be injured, more likely to be burned out, and less likely to perform well, especially in stressful situations. I want to open it up to questions. I really do like having questions, and you can just go ahead and ask questions. You can ask in the chat if anybody has anything they want me to look at a little bit more. Okay, I will just talk real quick about the difference between general preparation exercises and special preparatory and special development. General preparatory exercises are that big base of exercises that we see in all the weight rooms. They're the squats, the snatches, the cleans and jerks. And specifically for weightlifting, the snatch and clean and jerk aren't part of them, but the squats and the power snatches and power cleans are. With special preparatory exercises, we're going to have partial movements for weightlifters. So they will be cleans from blocks, clean from hangs, things like that. And special developmental exercises will be specific movements that are developing it. For our other sports, the general prep exercises is pretty much anything we do in the weight room. Special preparatory will be things we do in the weight room that mimic athletic play and sports play. Things like jumping, because on the basketball court, volleyball court, we have to jump. So we will do special preparatory exercises that are jumping. Our special developmental exercises are going to be exercises that we do in the weight room that develop specific strengths for the field. A lot of that is focusing on the stretch shortening cycle and applying that to sport conditions. So a depth jump could be a special preparatory or special developmental exercise, depending on how we use it. Our competition exercises are going to be things which directly support or directly mimic or are in fact things we do in sport. In shot put, it is throwing shot put. It is throwing different weights of shot put. In swimming, it is emphasizing different speeds and different strokes. In track and field, it is running with a parachute. It is running with a sled. It is working just on the blocks. Those are all competition strength exercises. So when we get to that, especially when we talk about track and field, you can really see where we are going in for the competition exercises being a part of training of the athlete's practice. So we have to coordinate with the sport coach to find out what the athlete is doing so that we don't give them too much work that will cause them to be injured. At the advanced and elite level, even when we are prepping for a high level competition, so in weightlifting, we are preparing for nationals or an international level meet. 80% of our work is going to be in weightlifting, snatches, cleans, jerks, squats. The other 20% is going to be remedial stuff. Things like stretching our hips, doing goblet squats, unweighted step-ups, some unilateral work, one-arm presses, some more one-arm squats. And we're doing that to keep the body healthy in that last 4 to 6 weeks, 3 to 6 weeks before competition. We eliminate everything 3 to 6 weeks, 3 weeks out, 4 weeks out, except snatch, clean, jerk, and squats. But even up to that very last point of competition, we are doing unweighted things that make us take time away from competition just to get healthier. There still needs to be that mix in there. Otherwise, we will fail and not do really well in our competitions because we are not healthy. That is, unless there are questions, that is everything I have to share today. Okay, if you guys can think of any questions, you can contact me. My email is mckennasgym@gmail.com. On Instagram, I'm Mckenna's Gym, and you can find me as Michael Mckenna on WhatsApp. I don't know how to tell you to find me on WhatsApp, but I'm there. So John can share with you my WhatsApp information. I don't mind being contacted on WhatsApp or via email. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your time and being able to share with us. I've learned a lot from you. Share in this community. Thank you. Samir, you have something?
Yeah, thank you. It was a good overview about the strength training and how it's used. Yeah, I just can say thank you, Mike.
Oh, thank you, Demir.
Thanks, Mike. Looking forward to talking to you again and having such a session again in the future.
If there's a
Cheers,
lot of
guys.
specifics we can go into. When you start getting to the specifics, it becomes much more in depth, and it can really get bogged down. Like, how do we do? I have progressions for my beginner athletes for jumping progressions. We have a 6 to 12 week jumping progression that we do for that all our beginners do whenever they come in across the board. And that is obviously much more detailed than an introductory presentation. And then we have details for everything, how we teach the weightlifting movements, things we look for when we squat, how do we look for the strength and balances. Those things get very specific, but also there's just so much information that we want to make sure that when my athletes come in, we always have that base.
Kyle, you want to say something?
No, I thought it was good. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Kyle.
All right. We thank you so much. In case of anything, we'll reach out. Guys, have a good day, and for those in Africa, have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Best greetings from Germany.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Asante Sana.